It is the Arlington Cemetery of Jews. When you go through, and you should take a tour of Har Hazeisim and start with the Nevi'im and go all the way past the current Rabbanim. You'll see Jewish history. When I speak to people from England and I tell them, the Chevra Kadishas tell me there are 15,000 British citizens buried on Har Hazeisim. Close to 20,000 Americans buried on Har Hazeisim. From every country, from every stream, from every background. And then the government, and Malcolm Hoenlein sitting here, and he has played a huge role in this whole development on Har Hazeisim. Huge. And the cabinet, just a couple of weeks ago, adopted a 5-year plan to secure Eastern Yerushalayim and Har Hazeisim. 4,000 new policemen will be hired for Yerushalayim. 1,500 will be just for East Jerusalem and Har Hazeisim. So if you ever go to a breakfast and you want to know what was accomplished, I was there last year, Rabbi say, wow. I mean, who could have imagined? And when my brother first started the organization, and people told him, you're nuts, nothing will ever happen there. This is a place that is, it's just a bad neighborhood. Nothing's going to change. So before we ask the host and our speaker, Malcolm Hoenlein, I would like to show you the video so you get a little bit of a picture of what's going on in Har Hazeisim. One of the founding pillars of the ICPHH, Malcolm Hoenlein.
You could have had some further ado. I don't know how many of you know that when you mention Lubinsky in the halls of the Israeli government today, everybody starts shaking. They made possible what for now almost 50 years was deemed impossible. Next year marks the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Yerushalayim. And to think that it took all these decades for somebody to emerge, a pair of brothers together with friends, that has changed the future course of history in Yerushalayim. Because the loss of Har Hazeisim would be the loss of Yerushalayim. It's the way to divide Yerushalayim. It's a way to assure that the future would be put in doubt at the very least. Some will remember that a couple of years ago, when I spoke here, I said that there is a plot underway, that there are things being done now while we sit and wait on the sidelines. Our enemies are plotting all the time and have a clear design. It reminded me of what I think it was Rav Yaakov Zatzal who said, on B'chol Dar V'Dar, you mean there wasn't one generation that didn't have it? Every generation? And he said the answer is in the next paragraph in the Haggadah, Tzei Ulamad, where we read that Lavan Bikesh La'akar es HaKol. He said that in the generations that Yaakov, while he was building up his family and his flocks, he had problems, but he thought things were okay. But all the time, Lavan was plotting against him. For the last 4 decades, almost 5 decades, people thought we couldn't get to Har Hazeisim, but how much worse could it be? And in fact, all of this time, there was a plot being planned and enacted. And we saw it come to fruition in the last few weeks with a vote at UNESCO, the United Nations Educational Social, where none of them know what it means either. And they voted after a process of almost 2 years. And we tried to warn about it, and nobody wanted to listen to it, and nobody wanted to heed the warnings. When they started with a meeting of ISESCO in Amman, Jordan, a couple of years ago, 42 Arab countries with UNESCO, where they started talking about the Kotel being Al-Burak's wall, named for Muhammad's horse, who ascended one end or the other after him when he never visited Israel in his lifetime, but supposedly on his death, he went up from Har Rabbi, and his horse followed him. And that Kever Rachel was really a mosque named for the driver of Muhammad, and the Marat HaMachpelah is only a mosque. And people dismissed it. And when I called it to the attention, even of leaders in Israel and here, people said, but what could it mean? It was a joke. How can you rewrite? How can you eliminate 3,000 years of history? In every Arab document, in every League of Nations, every official document, Kutab Rachel is only described as Kever Rachel, Kutab Rachel. The Kotel was always called the Wailing Wall or the Western Wall, never Al-Burak's Wall. The Har Hazeisim is now what's never called Har Sharif, except in limited documents in more recent years by the Arabs. So after that, they brought it to a meeting in Berlin, and they adopted a formula where the names would be hyphenated. So the Kotel is the Kotel Al-Burak's Wall. Kever Rachel is Kutab Rachel / Mohammed Driver. And then, in an action last month, 57 countries participated in a vote that now removed the Jewish names altogether. And so the Kotel is only Al-Burak's Wall. Al-Burak's Plaza, Har Sharif, Kutab Rachel no longer exists. They have erased all of Jewish history. And by the way, it's true for the Goyim too, who hold these sacred. 57 countries, including France, Russia, India, voted for this resolution. The United States obviously opposed it. And you think about what's the intent? With all that's going on in the Middle East, with all the disruption, the volcano in the Arab countries, the collapse of borders and governments, why would they focus on this? Because they know if they take away our past, they take away our future. That if they erase all our connections, then what right do we have to be there today or to be there in the future? They have erased all of Jewish history, but also the Jewish connection. Last week, I was in the cemetery in Warsaw and at the cemetery behind the Ramah Shul in Krakow. And you see how they fixed up the cemetery in Warsaw, which is huge. And many Gedolim, many famous, many Rabbanim, many Rebbes are buried there, in addition to tens of thousands of others. And it used to be that you could hardly walk in. And yet that cemetery has been completely restored now. Many of the Matzevas are not in the right places, but because nobody knows where they belonged. And you think about the fact that all of this was invested to clean up this cemetery, as important as it is. And yet the most important national cemetery of the Jewish people could be neglected, could be allowed to deteriorate to the conditions that we saw there not long ago, and some of which still remains, and there's still much more work to be done. Last week we saved the cemetery in Gallipoli. Nobody knows where Gallipoli is. Even in Gallipoli they don't know where it is. But there's a Jewish cemetery with 1,000 graves that was going to be destroyed. And Erdogan, the president of Turkey, with whom I happened to meet 10 minutes after I got the call, just by chance, from Asra Kadisha about the problem in this cemetery, and just by share, 10 minutes later, I was meeting the president of Turkey. And I raised it with him, and in a minute, he got the governor of Gallipoli on the phone, and it turned out he was in the wrong cemetery. The governor thought it was the wrong cemetery, and we got a word Friday that they saved the cemetery. So we were able to save cemeteries around the world, but the most important one, the one that is a symbol to the whole world, and its desecration is a message to the world. You know, in this week's parsha, we talk a lot about V'ahavta l'reacha. What is the greatest expression of V'ahavta l'reacha, if not taking care of those of the dead, to take care of the kfaras, to take care, to make sure that they are afforded the dignity that they are entitled to. We have lost a lot of time over these 5 decades. But thank God, because of the work of this committee, and because of the commitment now, ministers talk about it. The government talks about it. They've committed money to it. There are soldiers up there, there are policemen up there, and there are many more that will be done. And we had to embarrass them into it, including the representatives of the frum parties, many of whom told me that they hadn't visited their grandparents' Gmarim in 20 years, in 30 years. Even Bibi's grandparents are buried there. And people did not go, and you can't be masik. What was it? How could they have allowed this situation to obtain for so long. So maybe it was like Avraham Avinu had to circle for 3 days before HaKadosh Baruch Hu would show him Har Moriah, to build up the anticipation, to get him to appreciate it, to be able to see what he might otherwise not have seen. Maybe we had to wait in order for us to appreciate the Kedusha, the importance, the significance of Har Hazeisim. And many more people are coming to realize that this is the true Chesed Shel Emes, that this is the true responsibility that all of us have there and in every other cemetery for that point. And the fact that Har Hazeisim occupies the important geopolitical position that it does. You know, it's the highest mountain in the region. It's about 90 meters higher than Har Hazeisim, than Har Moriah. It is of significance far beyond just its geographic location. We all know the Kedusha that's there. We know about the Nevi'im that are buried there. We know about the future role as well as the past role that Har Hazeisim played in our history. And now's a chance for our generation to come, to rise to the occasion, to meet our responsibility. All of Jewish history will know if we failed or if we succeeded. Our children and grandchildren and their grandchildren will benefit from it or pay the price for it. And I am pleased to be able to announce that a great friend of this committee, and somebody who's been very committed to it, has once again made a challenge grant to those of us who are here. George Klein said he will give $25,000 if we match it here today. He has done it in the past, and we were, Baruch Hashem, able to match his contribution. But this time, I think it's all the more important. We're really at a critical stage in the process that has led us to this point. So now it's a chance for all of us, each of us. Hashem Yireh, Hashem is watching us, Hashem is looking at us and seeing whether we appreciate the miracles that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has done for us. We've seen what people can do when they make the effort. Now we all have to show our appreciation, our Hakaras Hatov to them for what they have done, and our concern for what the future for our children and grandchildren.
Thank you, Malcolm. I just want to acknowledge a few people who during the past year have stepped up and helped the committee financially in terms of what we've done. We've hired somebody right now, a guy by the name of Josh Wanda, who will be on site on Har Hazeisim, providing security and also tours and whatever other people need. We also now have a European director who is organizing Europe, in addition to what we have now in Israel. I want to thank the Goldner family of Los Angeles that has pledged $50,000 over the next 3 years. Moti Klein's family, $25,000. The Bauman family of Los Angeles, $10,000 for the restoration of graves. And let me just stop for a moment. There are 23,000 graves that are 23,000 Mesim that do not have matzevis. When I went through the list, this is all mapped. That means every one of those people, we know exactly where they're lying. The Rebbe of the Chidah does not have a grave. The chief rabbi of Damascus from 1910 till 1940 doesn't have a grave. I went through Rabbanim from different communities from all over the world. Rabbi Sai, how can we allow this? How can we allow people not to have a grave because the Jordanians decided to build hotels and roads and latrines and who knows what to use for their kvarim? We must restore those 23,000 graves. Not to speak of the fact that it's an eyesore when you come and you see those destroyed graves. It doesn't give a sense of confidence. We must restore it, and I want to thank the Bauman family for jump-starting this effort. Ari Citrin with $5,000. Paul Rosenstock, who was such an important part of our committee, $5,000. Benny Fishoff and his family have constantly given. Dovi is here, and he's not only given of his money, but of his time and of his sage advice. Moshe Katlowitz, $1,000. Arya Weiss, $1,000. The Gelb family, $1,000. Peretz Levin, $1,000, and more and more and more. The more you help us, the more we will be able to do. And if we can come back with 1 year to give you this type of report, imagine what we'll be able to do. And you know, the most important thing is that we've given the Israeli government confidence that they can take back East Yerushalayim. And that's what Erdogan is saying now, and that's what the government cabinet is. We've shown them that it can be done, that we need not surrender Yerushalayim and say that this is a fact of life, that we can't do anything about it. Thank you very much, Rabbi Sai. And now, the Rav, the host, the Rav of Agudas Yisrael, Beis Binyamin, the Ruach HaChaya of this whole effort. Believe me, he is, as somebody said, Rabbi Lieffs has become your poster boy. Rabbi Moshe Tuvia Lieff.
Pershus Rabbonim Hagoinim Admoirim Goinim Achai V'Rei. When I was a kid growing up, certain vivid images that were burned in my heart and my mind. The footage we saw of British soldiers manning bulldozers and rendering kavod hameis to hundreds of thousands of Yidden that were killed al Kiddush Hashem and weren't yet cremated. And so because there was typhus, they tied handkerchiefs around their faces. And if you remember the scenes, they bulldozed these bodies into massive graves. In so many concentration camps, hundreds of thousands of bodies. Rabbi say, take that film and run it backwards. Because that's exactly what the Arabs did, Yimach Shemam. Shalom first, right here, please. What they did was they took bulldozers and instead of burying our Kedoshim, our Tzadikim, our Rishon Acharonim, our Nevi'im, they upended them, whole bodies, limbs, skulls, 65,000, and tossed them around like dirt, and didn't just build the Intercontinental Hotel and pave latrines with tombstones, with monuments, with matzeves, hal betzorah. The bodies themselves, the kedoshim themselves, the tzaddikim themselves. And they turned them into donkey racing carts, donkey racing tracks. And they built villages to the right and the left of Har Hazeisim. All those Arab villages are built on top of Kfarim. The Navi Zechariah says this very succinctly. The Navi Zechariah in Kapitel Gimel says as follows. Koyomar Hashem tzvakois im bedrochai telech v'im es mishmalti sishmor v'gam ato todin es beisi v'gam tishmor es chatzeroi v'nosati locho mahalchim bein ha'oimdim ha'ela. You do yours, and I'm going to turn the oimdim into mahalchim. I read this in a Michtav Tanchumim for Rav Hutner, but because this Litvak has become a chassid of Reb Tzadok, I'm teaching it now for 7 years. We learned together Reb Tzadok, Erev Shabbos at the Agudah. So it's a Beferish Pri Tzadok. He explains that there are 2 types of bruyim, oimdim and mahalchim. You know, a child is called bro kared avur, the knee of the father. Why the knee of the father? Why not the heart, the eyes, the mind? Unless, Chalila, you need a knee replacement, you don't even think about your knee. Zot Reb Tzadok, there are 2 types of bruyim. There are malachim that are oimdim. They fulfill their mandate and they remain eternally at that same level. And then there are mahalchim, human beings that are alive and well. They steig, they grow, they accomplish, they climb. As a mensch is nifter, ken sein a tzaddik, ken sein a rebbe, a yeshiva, a rav. He's turned automatically from a mahalach into an oimed. He's very close to the kisei hakoved, but he can't go any further. He can't ascend. He's frozen in place eternally. He's like a malach. But when you open up the Sefer of Pachad Yitzchok and you learn a Maimer of Rav Hutner, when you learn Ar Gedal Yohu, when you look at the Torah of the Alta of Slabodka, when you learn the Torah of Yosef Chaim Zonnevel, when you learn the Navi Zechariah, as we just did, Sif Soisov, Doivavois Bekera, and you're bringing him back alive. And he is now ascending even further and ever closer to the Kisei HaKavod. The Navi Zechariah is very close to the Kisei HaKavod. But every time that we learn from Zechariah, we bring him closer to the Kisei HaKavod. Those is the Mitzias. And the knee is the part of the body that makes you ambulatory. It's like you're taking the Navi Zechariah and you're putting him on your shoulders and he's walking. Imagine what it means to safeguard the makom of these tzaddikim from further disinterment, from further bizoyin. Like Moran Rav Aaron Shechter Shlichti told me 2 years ago at the onset of this event. He said, not only do the goyim step on us in our lifetimes, but they want to step on our graves and trample our dignity. And that's exactly not what they're trying to do, but what they're doing. There are Arabs that spend 1,000 shkolim for every grave that's demolished. Take a sledgehammer, smash the grave, show them a picture, they'll give you 1,000 shkolim. And then there was a mahapecha. In the kavod of the tzaddikim, the gaonim, the rishonim, the neviim, a mahapecha started by two brothers. This is not their business, but it became their business. Now I have a vested interest. Brother Zunzain is here, Rebbe and Professor Lieff. My father's Zatzal was nifta 19 years ago, and he's on Har Hazeisim, together with his father, his mother, my mother's Ozangazun's father, her mother, every uncle and aunt, my uncle Rabbi Moshe Rattenberg, the Rosh Yeshiva of Ger and Chachma Lublin. And I've gone 19 years to the kever. And in 19 years, the matzav is the same. We daven vasikin, we leave early in the morning. Normal, the Rabbi Shechev, Rav Bergman, please come. I'm going to wait. Come. There's plenty of seats behind me. Come. Take another minute. Oilam Poshit. Rav Bergman, come. Rav Bergman, come. I'm a stubborn guy. You don't know me yet. Come, Rav Bergman, right there. Sit right there. Thank you very much. Upon him, the bottom line is that they've made a hamapecha. And let me just give you succinctly. I've heard things like, there's millions of dollars being pumped into this. It's a slush fund for something. I don't know for what. I see Avram Lubinsky's house. It's a simple house on East 12th Street. You can go see it yourself. Maybe they've got funds that they're doing something, Dalton, and come, please, Rebbe. The Ontish Shura is, it's the most kosher gelt that I know. And they're doing two very pashut things. It's not rocket science. My entire Yedid Agoyin Rav Aaron Kahn came up with a very good idea that yes, we know who these kfarim are. We should contact descendants all over the world, Yidden, maybe they're not so connected to Yiddishkeit, and show them pictures of the cave or say we're restoring it. They'll be in a chayach. That's an excellent idea. This idea is a simple idea that they're doing. Number one, there's safety in numbers. They are generating support from all over the world that Har Hazeisim should be a mokim of Kedusha and people should come and visit. Beis HaKnesses to daven Mincha and Ma'ariv. Guided tours to the cave of the Gedolim. Now, you might be offended by what I'm about to say, but the Koisel is not limited to Charedim. The greatest simcha I get is when I go to the Koisel and I see Svardish fellas maybe not so connected as much to Yiddishkeit as they could be, dancing David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kai, making a bar mitzvah at the Koisel. What's that like a felach? What's that like a felach of the Yid that's not yet Shemet Torah mitzvahs, puts on a Yamaha and goes over and says a kapitel Tillim. Even if he poses for a picture, I'm not happy about that. But Snifflin the Welt, to have so many Yidden going, that's the first Eitzah. The Rebbe, nothing geferlach with more and more Yidden coming to Har Hazeisim, to daven, to re-explore their roots, the same way they come to the Kaisel. If thousands and tens of thousands of people would come, that would automatically change the landscape. And a praktische Zach is building a wall to safeguard beginning the Gerachelka and other places, Afghanistan, that have been desecrated, the Kfarim from Afghanistan. They've even desecrated the Kfarim of soldiers. There isn't anyone in Eretz Yisrael that's not concerned. But the politicians, and the chief rabbi was here 2 years ago, told me personally that they are mortified and embarrassed that Yidden and Flatbush have to get together on Bedford and O to discuss Har Hazeisim, to turn it into a front burner issue. But Bereshus, the Rebbe Shlita, the Admon of Minsk, Rosh Agudas Yisrael, he's been so involved in this, and he's come to speak for us. He's been mechazik us since day one in this inyan. They realize that this is a cause to champion. And as you saw in that film, it wasn't necessarily only the Haredish members of Knesset that are jumping on the bandwagon, the head of the labor movement, all types of individuals. Whether because the Lubinskis, or a Malcolm, or Gedolei Yisrael that are at the forefront, this is a mitzvah. And it's Mistama Chiyuv. And if you learn the Navi Zechariah, Mahalchim bein oim de mo'ele, we start to get a sense of what we're doing. Kodesh Baruch Hu yatzliach darkeinu, v'shibizeicha b'siyata l'shmaya to ribui k'foit shamayim. And I thank personally the Rabbanim Ga'onim that participated, Acha v'reai, v'shibizeicha that the Ben Shem Zol Zen, that if we take Talmidei Chacham v'Zen and Nishdo seriously, we'll take the Talmidei Chacham v'Zen and Do even more seriously. We'll be zeicha that the Rabbeinu Shalom will continue to be mechazik us in our avodah, and our Torah, and our mitzvahs. Yiratzin Shemali Hashem Kol Mashalas Libenu L'Toiva B'Geshem V'Ruach. Zeicha to the greatest simcha b'Viyas HaGol Me'er V'Yameinu. Amen.
I just want to clarify one thing. Of the 23,000 graves that needed mitzavis that have to be put there, most of those people were nifter between the year 1480 to 1850. In most cases, I went through the Rishima of the Svardische Chelkes there, and most cases it says like this. It says, Ovadia ben Yosef HaKohen. Go find the family of Ovadia ben Yosef HaKohen from different cities. So I think that the Achrayas, and I told you I found the Chidos Rebbes amongst the people that does not have a caver. The chief rabbanim of Damascus, of Cairo, some of the Mizrach rabbanim are buried there. I think this is our chayv that we have to do this job. The 23,000 kvarim. It happens to be. How much is it? To do it right. See, the government restored 20,000. Heist is 20,000 kvarim, but they did not have the names of the people, so they just put kvarim on top of it without names, so that nobody should step matzavis on top of the remains, and that's it. This time, the 23,000, we know exactly, it's mapped, we know exactly where they're lying, and we can put a matzeva right on top. And this would be a gewaldige appeal for shuls if every shul would adopt a certain number of kvarim to be restored. It cost about $2,000 each matzeva to restore it, which means the Chevra Kaddish has to go in, confirm that this is the place where it's mapped out, and then put a matzeva with the name on top of it. First of all, it would change the whole complexion of Har Hazeisim. You wouldn't see this chorva over there when you come from the road and you look and you see all this chorva. It'll give people a sense of confidence. But the achrayas that we have, that people like this do not have matzevas because the Jordanians destroyed it between 1948 and 1967, and we haven't restored it. It's a tremendous achrayas on us. By side, the Rebbe is here with us. And I know he's very busy, and I don't want to take more of his time. And he's been a supporter of ours from the beginning. Without the Rabbi side, the Rebbe, please.
B'shus Harav Mordasra, our host this morning, and all the Choshev Rabbanim that are here. The truth is that I've not been involved because two simple reasons. Ich habe nicht kein Koyach and ich habe nicht keine Zeit. In this sacred effort to preserve, to save the Har Hazeisim, and I never understood why. I still don't know why the government throughout the years hasn't seen fit to preserve. This is one of our most precious commodities. The Har Mishcha, as the Mishnah calls it. Mishcha means oil. And it comes from the word Mishicha, you pour oil. Nimshach b'shem Mishcha. And the Hazeisim, the Har Hazeisim, which produced the oil, which was used to consecrate Dvarim Shebekdusha in previous times, is an achrayus for us, as you all have heard many times, to preserve, to keep. And I only have one answer. Maybe the reason why all this hasn't been done until now was in order to give us the schus to do so. It doesn't prevent for the kasha completely. But the fact of the matter is that we have to be Mekayim HaShavas HaVeda to the Klal Yisrael. And the Klal Yisrael's relationship to the Har Hazeisim is such, I don't have to go into explaining all that, that it imposes an achrayus on each yochid to do what he can, to see not only that the niftarim have the proper kabbat ha'achron ad bias hagoyel, but also the Kvod Shemayim requires that this Mokum Kodesh outside the Harabayis, which is Negeya in so many halachas, in Hilchas Paraduma, Noichach Pnei Yoel Moed, and there's so many halachas that are involved in connection with the Har Hazeisim and its position towards the Kodesh Kodeshim, that it makes us, it should make us extremely sensitive to the need that this bezoyan that has taken place on the Har Hazeisim for so many years should be removed. It's a blot. It's a stain that we didn't do anything about it. And the major blame is, of course, on the government officials. But Mishpachas Lubinsky have a particular schus in having been murdered, all of us, to feel responsible, to do something, and to mekayim this mitzvah of covered, I call it Hashavas Aveda. It's an Aveda. Ta'isi kisar eved bakish avtecha ki mitzvah lo yishachachti. The Klal Yisrael is a ser eved. But there are many individual Avedas, as we all heard just a few moments ago. Hundreds of people have no matzevas. Something has to be done about this. And I don't have a busy schedule today. I just finished this year, as I said before, that's why I'm not so involved in the day-to-day efforts of this sacred project. So, having said all this, which I mean to use as somewhat of a limud schus on myself for not being more involved in this sacred work, and we bring back the Shekhinah to its rightful place, the Yerushalayim Mir HaKodesh, and the Har HaMishcha should begin to flow oil again. It should be Shemen Mishchas Kodesh. Maybe shall help that we should complete our task in doing everything we can to restore the covet of that Mokum Kodesh. And those who have a schus in it will certainly be zeicha. B'zeh Baba, the Kol Mitzvah Teva. Thank you very much.
Rabbi,
I don't have any type.